So this is the first piece that we are doing here with A2A. We've got Roen McCullough here. Roen, good to meet you. Thank you for coming on, taking some time out. How are you doing?
Good. First off, I want to thank you. Thank athletes to athletes and everything that you guys are doing. Really appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Yeah, so let's start with just general background. Where are you from? What was it like growing up where I know you're from Ohio, but kind of talk about, where you're from and the athletic background.
Right. So I'm from Worthington, Ohio, which is about 15 minutes north of OSU. Growing up, I played basketball, t-ball. Found out that I really wasn't good at those, so I switched over to football, lacrosse, and wrestling. Um, Focused on football in high school, but for wrestling, I placed third in state my eighth grade year. It's kind of my claim to fame with wrestling. But I think if I didn't go to play football in college, I would have went to play, or I would have went to wrestle. But yeah, so three-sport athlete growing up, decided to focus on football, and yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. I was a wrestler growing up myself, and I wrestled all my life until I chose football in college. Just two sports for me though, just football and wrestling. So I completely understand that balance of the football wrestling grind that it
Oh
kind of
yeah,
puts you in. And I mean, wrestling really gets you ready for football though. There's a
yeah,
lot of wrestlers that are doing very well
yes.
currently right now. So now when you were growing up, was it you said you live very close to OSU. So was it your goal to end up at OSU kind of by any means necessary?
Yeah, so I mean, I always had OSU as an option. I was like thinking to myself, if I don't go to play football anywhere, if I choose to just be a regular student, Ohio State was definitely my dream school. But kind of my goal was, I'm a big guy. I try to keep all my options open. So I'm like, Ohio State's nice, but if there's any opportunity for me to play collegiate athletics somewhere else, I'm going to try to open as many doors as I can. And I love networking with people, and I love, just going out and seeing what's out there. So obviously, Ohio State, being a Columbus guy, it was a dream school, but I just try to focus on getting as many offers as I could, opening all doors as possible.
Yeah, what other schools were you looking at besides Ohio State?
Oh, football wise, it was Ohio State, Georgia, Cincinnati, Toledo, and a little bit of Virginia Tech. But really, I kind of want to stay on the East Coast. I went out to the West Coast and all out west for football camps. I found that kind of like the Midwest, East Coast, and down into the South are kind of my areas that I kind of want to stay away from the South, though. I'm not a big humidity guy. I can deal with the heat, but humidity for me, I cannot take it at all. So yeah, it
So
was
heading off to Texas was never in the plans, huh?
no, I mean, I love Texas, but at the same time, I think I kind of want to stay back home.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So now when it came time to make your decision, obviously you had a host of schools that you were looking at. What were those conversations like with, your family and friends, when it came to making the decision to be a preferred walk-on at Ohio State?
Right. So it's a funny story. So my oldest brother Jude was a cheerleader at Ohio State. Went on to be a cheerleader for the Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers when they won the World Championship in 2016. And then my other brother Liam was a long snapper at Ohio State as well. So I kind of already had a foot in the door there. I mean, it was hard to turn down other offers, other scholarship offers. I had an offer to Cincinnati, which was it was really between Ohio State and Cincinnati. Cincinnati does a different program than Ohio State called a co-op, where you basically do like a semester of internships, and that was really appealing to me. But I think in the end, it was kind of more my connections and my relationships that I already built at Ohio State with my brother. And I grew up playing football with my brother, and Liam's kind of been my rock growing up. So every single level except for middle school, we've played together. And going to Ohio State with him, I was like, what better opportunity could I have than keeping it in the family? So it's kind of a tradition that we've passed on.
Yeah. Now, was it hard to make that decision, like basically passing up other scholarship offers, and was it hard to kind of get your family on board with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy turning down, money. I think looking at it, and I mean, I talked to my dad about it, and he was kind of him and I have more of a financial, I don't want to say financial relationship, but we talk business a lot. And it was a conversation him and I had where we sat down and said, listen, if you go to Ohio State as preferred walk on, A, you don't know if you're going to play. B, you know, you're gonna have to pay for school. I mean, my mom's employed by the university, so I kind of got half off there, but still, it was definitely hard turning up other scholarship offers to come to Ohio State. But I think that the weight that an Ohio State degree holds was kind of the deciding factor with that.
So that's pretty cool. Now, once you finally are in that recruiting process, though, so let's kind of take a step back to that recruiting process. What are you hearing from coaches, right? They all have the different spiel, and you know they're only going to give you the glowing review. You're going to get the glossy flyer. You know, what is that, and how much did these pitches overlap with all these different schools?
I don't want to say every single one was the same, but every single one was the same. You know, every college coach is going to fluff you up, tell you, you know, we only look at you, you know, we really want you to come to our school, because they want to keep as much talent at their school as possible. So, I mean, every college coach is, you know, Roen, we really want you, you know, there's an opportunity for you to be put on scholarship here. If they didn't give me an offer already, you know, we want to get you in on the field as soon as possible, stuff like that. So it was really hard to kind of discern what was truth and what was kind of the fluff of things. But being able to have an older brother that went through it already, with Ohio State, they didn't really give me the fluff because I was there for his recruiting process. And so under Coach Meyer, obviously they gave him the recruiting pitch because he was a really sought after recruit. And I saw that. But then as soon as Liam committed to Ohio State, I saw Coach Meyer's demeanor change entirely. And it was not so much more of a friend. It was I'm a coach. So it was literally, I was in Coach Meyer's office when my brother committed, and it was, you know, he's so excited. And as soon as Liam committed, it was, all right, get down to business. Here's what we're doing, X, Y, and Z. But for me, myself, you know, every college coach is going to tell you what you want to hear, and everything's going to sound super appealing. So I think, especially what athletes to athletes is doing is exposing, I don't want to say exposing that, but bring that to light and say, you know, this is what it is. So yeah, I think a lot of colleges are similar in telling, you know, we're looking to win championships, bring on talent, but it's all pitch, it's all sales.
Yeah. So what was it? What was it like for you then? Since you said you were in the room when your brother committed, they couldn't really give you the same sort of pitch. So would you feel that it was at least with Ohio State, that it was a bit more real for you?
Yeah, I would say it was a bit more real, because I mean, I was able to see the kind of the behind the scenes. But when they're kind of pitched to me, and nowadays I think that's what their pitch is turning into, is we're Ohio State. Like, not many schools are Ohio State, and just saying that in of itself is their spiel. I mean, they have a lot of stuff that they pitch as well, like off the field, character building, personal development, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was more so I had that real conversation with Coach Combs. Coach Combs and Coach Meyer were the two coaches that recruited me. And I actually, funny story. So I weighed 250 pounds coming into my junior year or senior. I think it was my senior year. And
Of high school?
Of high school, yeah. I was a big boy. Coach Meyer asked me to snap for him at Friday Night Lights. And this is before they offered me to come walk on. But I went to Friday Night Lights, snapped in front of him, in front of the entire other recruits, had perfect snaps, probably snapped the best I ever have. Looked up at him for any criticism. He just goes, "You're fat. You need to lose weight." And I was like, "Yes, sir." I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, this dude. But you know, looking back on it, you know, he didn't criticize my snaps. And so it was a win for me. But
Yeah.
that's it kind of shows you the honesty, the brutal honesty that a lot of these college coaches have. So
Yeah.
it was really real for me. It wasn't the glamour that most recruits get.
Yeah. So once you get there, you know, you commit and you get there,
Mm.
what's life like for you? You know, you said you'd already obviously been there with your brother. Your mom works there, so you're familiar with the campus. So for you, it's probably a little bit different than you know most other freshmen. But what's that life balance like when you're trying to balance the film schedule of waking up very early, having practices in the morning, then going to class? You know, what's that balance like?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an adjustment. I've always been a disciplined guy. So time management really wasn't an issue for me, but Ohio State has a lot of, and I'm sure other colleges have a lot of academic support where if I needed a tutor, I could pick up the phone, text my academic advisor, call my academic advisor, and they would have a tutor for me the next day at a certain time. And so it was hard to adjust, but they have a lot of programs in place to help you succeed. Um, and I think what also helped me with that is throughout high school, I had a really strict schedule as well. Obviously, the rigor of my classes was less than it was at Ohio State, especially going into the major that I chose. But sitting down with your academic advisor and saying, "Listen, you have this class. This is your class block. This is your practice block." And then after this is your free time to go to tutors, to do your homework, to get your meals in, stuff like that. So it was definitely a change of scenery from from high school, but going into Ohio State, the program really helped smooth that transition over.
Hmm. Now you touched on it a little bit when it came to majors. Did you declare as a freshman, or was it something that you figured out a little bit later on?
Yeah, so I declared as a freshman. I got direct admission into our business school straight out of high school, and I actually, so I'm finance major. My brother was also a finance major, so that kind of helped me navigate. And I'm a big believer that like you can go into whatever you want to in life, but life is all a business. Every single aspect of life is a business. So let's say let's say I had a passion for makeup, for example. I would go get a business degree, and then I go do makeup on the side as a business owner. And
Yeah.
so finance was really what drew me to that major and just being able to understand money, make it work for me. And well, I like the stock market. I mean, everyone's different,
Mhm.
but I think having a business degree it holds a lot of weight in today's society.
Yeah. Now, when you made your decision to declare a major as a freshman, because I know some people don't. If you're like me, you change your major a couple of times.
Yep.
I before I got into media, I was a business major myself, and realized that it wasn't really for me, and thought I was an accountant, going to be an accountant, and that wasn't for me either. And ended up realizing that I should have been in journalism, right? So there's a lot of students out there who I've spoken to that the same thing happens to them. They get into a major as a 17, 18-year-old, and they realize it's not for them, and they have to change majors or drop classes or whatever else. When you get into your major, did you ever have a doubt? And when you were thinking about declaring, was there a thought of this is going to set me up for life after Ohio State?
Yeah, so I am a big planner. I plan my week, I plan my month, I plan my year. I'm like looking 20 steps ahead, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I came in wanting to be a finance major, but my passion really is in sales. But Ohio State doesn't have a sales program. So I looked and there was like this special program that I could do that I could basically build my own major or specialization within the business school. So about a year or two into my finance degree progression, I sat down with my advisor and I was like, I really don't like finance. It's boring. I love the stock market, but it's boring. And I like people. I like talking to people. I don't want to sit behind a computer all day and just work and mindlessly. So yeah, it was something where I've debated a lot of the times changing my major, but just kind of looking ahead. I think having a finance degree, the amount of like liquidity you have in going into different areas within business, a finance degree kind of overrules all of that. Um, but yeah, it was hard. I think the average is like 2 to 3 major changes per person in their college career. Um, but going through, I definitely did think about changing my major, but I just chose to stick with it because I really didn't want. I wanted to graduate in 3.5 years, and that was a really big goal of mine. So this December, but yeah, it was hard, and I stuck with it.
Yeah. How much help did your brother give you? Did he tell you that it was hard?
Yeah, so yeah, he did tell me it was hard. It's like learning a whole new language. It was He did help me a lot with understanding material because I know professors have office hours and stuff like that, but I think in my entire career I went to office hours maybe once or twice. Um, I'm a smart kid, but having an older brother that went through all the same classes that I did, it was really nice for him to be able to brush me up on some topics and stuff like that.
Mhm. Now, football wise, and you kind of touched on it a little bit when you talked about your conversation with your dad, and he said you don't know if you're going to play.
Yep.
What was the atmosphere like at practice when it came to being somebody in your position? And by that, I mean, as a preferred walk on, instead of somebody who was, the number one guy in the class that they're bringing in to be the next whoever at Ohio State.
Right. And I think so. On a preface this, but I feel like nowadays the whole trend is through with recruiting. It's all like trying to get famous on social media, right?
Yeah.
I'm not famous on social media. I'm not that kind of guy. So it's one of those things where at practice, who the top guys are.
Yeah.
But at Ohio State, especially, I would hope a lot of colleges do this. When you first come in, they try to humble everybody and put everybody on the same playing field. They don't care if you're a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, or no star. They don't care if you're a long snapper or a linebacker or defensive line. They don't care who you are. If you work hard, it's a merit-based system. So if you work hard, you're going to get results and you're going to get rewarded for that. Being at practice, though, especially being a long snapper at practice, you have eyes on you at all times. Like, what is this kid doing? Is he slacking off? Is he, they could look at you. If you slack off for 1 second, and that's the only second they look at you, you have a bad reputation on the team. So it's definitely one of those things where you have to be very cognizant of your image and your reputation on the team. You have to know your place. And for me, being like a leader on the team wasn't, it didn't mirror how a top guy could be a leader, right? Like, I'm not going to be a team captain per se. I'm not going to be the spokesperson for the entire team. I could maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to know your place, and you got to know when to lead, know when to follow. So everybody has a role, and I feel like at Ohio State, especially, they did a really good job of humbling every athlete and basically saying, hey, if you work hard, you're going to get rewarded, and if you don't, you're not.
Yeah. Now when you and I spoke before this, you talked about changing to a linebacker,
Mhm.
and going through a bit of a transition. Um, what was that conversation like? Did you bring up that conversation with the coaches, or did they come to you and say, "Hey, we think that you could, get on the field a little bit more if you switch to this"?
Right. So a little backstory behind this. So Coach Washington is our linebackers coach right now at Ohio State. He also, before he went to Boston College, and I'm pretty sure he was the linebackers coach there, I think,
Okay.
or the defensive. I think he was the linebackers coach there. He actually came to my high school and recruited me to Boston College to play linebacker. And
Okay.
I told him no. I said I want to be a long snapper, but it kind of came full circle, and he came to Ohio State, and I was already here. And I always joked around about. I was like, hey, if you guys ever need like a scout team linebacker, I'd be more than happy to like go in for a couple of plays. Because as a long snapper, sitting at practice gets boring. You can only snap. I mean, what am I going to do? Snap a couple of balls and just stand there?
Yeah.
Um, but no. So I was joking around with him a lot. And then 2 days before the spring game, I had my special teams coordinator and and Coach Washington, the linebackers coach, come up to me and say, hey, how do you feel about playing in the spring game as a linebacker? And I was like, you guys are joking. Like, there's no way. And, and they said, well, here's a couple plays, here's a playbook, and learn these. And I went in and I did pretty well. And so they kind of formally changed my position to linebacker. And it was a big adjustment, obviously, with film and practices. As a long snapper, it's snap straight back or snap left and right, and that's about
Hmm.
it. Run down the field. Linebacker, I was like, it was a whole new world. And I mean, I was rough on my football skills. I have a good football IQ, but going and having to learn the plays all over again, it took me back to kind of my roots of high school and trying to learn defenses and offenses and stuff like that. So it was definitely a blessing, but it was hard. It was a hard overall experience, but it was really rewarding.
Yeah. So you change positions, and you have to basically relearn, the footwork and the plays, and there's a lot to relearn. But obviously your day-to-day has to change. What's a day in the life look like as a long snapper, and what's a day in the life look like as a linebacker?
Right. So as a long snapper, I don't want to say long snappers and special teams in general places more value. I don't want to say more value on academics, but we focus a lot of our time on academics and off the field stuff. Where if I'm able to I'm able to skip meetings, or when other teams in meetings, I can go work on homework. I can do tests and stuff like that. I can meet with my professors. But you can't really miss a meeting as a linebacker. You got to be in there. You got to know, the ins and the outs and stuff like that. So um, usually as a long snapper, we would come in, let's say for fall camp, for example, come in, you have practice, the team and everybody goes to position meetings and all the specialists are, you know, diddling around. They don't really do anything. I don't want to say they don't do anything, but they do recovery, stuff like that. And as a linebacker, it's more so, you go to practice, you come out of practice, you eat, you go to meetings, you come out, you get a break, you go back into meetings. And you don't really have time to breathe as a linebacker. And I think
What
film
time
study.
what time are you waking up in the morning? Like, what's the first thing that you're getting to as a
Okay.
linebacker?
So it was, for me, waking up in the morning, we would have workouts at 6:30 in the morning. So I'd wake up I was always the earliest group. That's kind of, they viewed, I was a linebacker, but they viewed me as a specialist still. So I would wake up at probably, if it was at 6:30, I'd wake up at 5 because I'm weird about this. I always have to take a shower before I work out or anything like that. So I'd wake up at 5, take a shower, come in, get ready for my workout, do some recovery stuff, some stretching, some preventative stuff for injuries, work out, and then we would go into meetings afterwards. And meetings, Coach Washington's really famous for. He's like, "Oh, this is gonna be really quick." And he's like, "It's gonna be a 30-minute meeting," and it turns into an hour and a half. And I love the guy. Don't get me wrong, but it was definitely like special teams is very concise. Here's performance. We either made the field goal or we didn't. We made the punt or we didn't. Linebackers, it's definitely you are pushed and you're quizzed on the material, stuff like that. So it was definitely a change of scenery.
Yeah. So would you say that becoming a linebacker changes your entire day from anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. It was more of a focus on football. I think as a specialist, as a long snapper, I had a lot more more free time and a lot more time to, say, oh, I snapped well, I didn't snap well, I'm going to brush it off, come to the next day. And I could just push that aside and focus on, my work or social life or stuff like that. As a linebacker, you can, even if you do well, you still got to stay on top of it. You still got to learn, you still got improvement. So it's literally, you got meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. And then even when you're out of meetings, it's them sending you film of you in practice saying, hey, this needs to tighten up or this needs to change, or hey, here's a recommendation for next time. So as a linebacker, it's a lot more structured and a lot stricter.
Mm-hmm. So moving on, let's kind of dig into, the meat of your story and why you're no longer playing. So how does that come about? What forced you to retire at such a young age in your career?
So starting off my career at Ohio State, came in, my brother's obviously the snapper. My first year I redshirted, took a backseat to Brad, who is the snapper now. And then I got COVID September, literally 3 days ago, a year ago, 3 days ago, September 10th of 2020. And I developed a heart condition from it, a rare heart condition called myocarditis, which is the inflammation of the heart. Scarred my left ventricle pretty badly. And usually it would take about 6 weeks to recover. But mine took 4.5 months. It was pretty bad. I got able to be cleared for the Big Ten championship. Came in there and, busted tail and had the entire off season, worked my tail off and got my weight up. After the spring game, had all of this summer to train because I wanted to play linebacker this year. Mm-hmm. And with it being such a thin and young room, I felt like I had a decent chance at it. And I was really excited. But then being a walk-on, you gotta work, you gotta make money somehow. So I don't know if this is the smartest move, but I ended up being our head of security at a restaurant and bar in downtown Columbus, and got into a little scuffle and ended up tearing my labrum in my shoulder pretty badly. Dislocated my shoulder. I didn't want it to happen, but everything happens for a reason. It is what it is. But it set me back. And then I was faced with probably the hardest situation in my life, where I graduate in December. I'm a senior. I have job offers lined up in January. So it's, do I want to get the surgery now and be done playing football and not have to worry about surgery, recovery, and rehab when I'm starting my career and with life after football? Or do I want to get my push my surgery to January after the season's over, stay with the team, risk injuring my shoulder even more, where it could impact life after football? Because I want to be an active guy later in life. But um, it was hard because I looked at myself and I said, do I really want to forego my senior season? And, it was just one of those things where I had to sit down with my parents. I had to sit down with my grandma, my brother, and I ended up choosing to focus on myself, my own mental health. And I went with surgery before the season, and it was hard. It was a really hard decision to make. But I've had nothing but support from my friends and family. And life after football's only going to last you. College football's only going to last you, what, 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 if you redshirt or take an extra year. But life after football, you're going to have 40, 50, 60 years after that. And that's really what drew me to make that conclusion and that decision.
Hmm. So when things change, you're no longer with the team. What's life like? I guess what's life like now, right? That you're just a student.
Right. So it's definitely a big change. Having my day full of football, full of, I get free meals. I come in, I get a workout plan. I don't even have to plan my own workouts. I just come in there and they tell me what to do. It's super structured to basically I'm on my own. Haven't done anything with the football team since. So it's basically like, good luck this semester. See ya. And that was the reality of it. And it was hard, but I throughout Ohio State, I've set myself up, or I've tried to set myself up with connections, because I realized that for me, the NFL probably wasn't an option the way my career was playing out.
Hmm.
I got the second string spot, and I just realized, maybe football isn't going to be a career in it. It's football is something I like. Football, I don't love football. It's definitely a means to an end, and it's a platform that I can use to share my own personal story, make connections, and build my career afterwards. So I focused on, getting as many internships as I could while I was in the football program, really worked on how can I utilize Ohio State rather than Ohio State utilizing me. So I took advantage of all the connections, the alumni we had, any kind of internship experience, networking opportunity, career fair, stuff like that. So I would get connections with LinkedIn, phone numbers. I'd cold call people and just say, hey, I'm an Ohio State football player. How can I add value to your network? And just be able to have those conversations with people. But it was really hard. So now I transitioned into filling my days with, I work 2 part-time jobs and I'm a full-time student. Before this, I was talking to you about, I mentor this kid with Down syndrome every morning for about a few hours, 2 to 3 hours a day, as companion for the semester at Ohio State. And then I go to class, and then I go to work at night. I work on the weekend still as a bouncer, head of security at this bar. Get paid pretty well, but now I got some structure in place where I'm not going to be getting hurt. So
Yeah.
um, definitely just filling it with work, trying to save up money, investing money, and setting me and hopefully my future family up for success in the future.
So as a young student coming into Ohio State, declaring a major as a finance major, um, how much of these thoughts about life after Ohio State football did you have to make sure that if something like this did happen, that you would still be in a good spot?
Right. Yeah. So like I said, I'm a planner, and ever since I was a freshman in high school, I was like, I'm ready to be done with school. I'm ready to have a family and start a life, which is a good thing, but it can be a bad thing because then you don't enjoy the season that you're in.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
kind of rushing through things a little bit.
right, right. So it was definitely something where I had to press pause and be able to say, okay, the moment I'm in, how can I appreciate the moment I'm in, but still look for areas of opportunity and areas of growth that I can, set myself up and my family up for success in the future. So yeah, when I declared my major, it was really something I kind of declared my major because I did want to set myself and my family up. Because finance, I was thinking to myself, if I can make my money work for me and understand how money works, I'm gonna be able to, live comfortably with my family. And I've always been a family oriented man. really just focusing on that. So coming into Ohio State and my time at Ohio State, my priority really has been on how do I set myself up for life after football? How can I develop myself as a future husband, as a future father, to be successful, a future business owner, stuff like that. And so I did utilize a lot of Ohio State's resources in doing so. And I think I don't want to say I've been successful in doing it because there's always room to improve. But so far, I like the way it's turning out.
Yeah. So how many of those conversations did you have with, your friends? Because I can remember being somebody your age. I wasn't thinking about life after football. I mean, I played Division III football. So, for me, the NFL is an even further, goal than most kids like you who are going Division I. So it wasn't a thought for me, right? But I wasn't thinking about, okay, this is something that I feel I can get into and something I can look to down the road. Cause like I said, I changed my major a couple of times. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So how many of these conversations are you having with your peers, your parents, your brother about life after football, and knowing as a 18-year-old that you want to set yourself up for a just in case measure like this, or just even if your career pans out and you decide to be done with football and move on with your career?
Yeah, so I think there's two things to this. I think my family and then my teammates. So first off, family. My dad. I had this conversation with him a lot. He came from a really poor background. He lived in Northeast Ohio. Had to support him and his family. So he's kind of instilled those values in me from a young age, and so it kind of drove my line of thinking. And so I've always kind of been future oriented. But secondly, with my teammates, at Ohio State, they have, it's the place to go to the NFL. And so people joke around and say NFL stands for not for long, right? There's always going to be like, you're going to go to the NFL for 3 to 5 years. You're going to make, let's say five mil a year. But then what are you going to do with that money? Are you going to spend it all? Are you going to get a fancy G-Wagon? Everyone wants to buy, houses for their parents and their grandparents and do all this crazy stuff. But how are you going to do that legitimately? So I'd have these conversations with my teammates, of the teammates that were going to the NFL, they kind of set in their ways because they looked up to a lot of the other NFL guys and how they were managing their own money. But for the other guys, being a finance major, especially, I talk to them. I say, hey, do you know what investing is? Do you know what a Roth IRA is? But if you go up to them and they're going to think you're like a little computer nerd or finance. They're not going to be, not going to listen to you. So it's more so of the conversation of, hey, how would you like to, take your $5,000 that you're about to spend on a designer Gucci backpack that you really don't need because we're provided backpacks by Ohio State. How can you take that $5,000 and turn it into $50,000 by the time you retire? Mm-hmm. So instead of spending that, $5,000, you can multiply by 10. Yeah. Finance in my head. Multiply by 10. Yeah. So it's more so coming at from that perspective. And I think, we could go down the rabbit hole of talking about education systems and, people's upbringings, but I'm from Worthington. I'm a white kid from Worthington, Ohio. I probably had there's not much diversity. I was a sheltered kid. I had a nuclear family. My parents were pretty stable growing up. And I did have that education, that realization that, this is how my dad did it. And I'll try to follow suit. So it was more so I saw that in myself, and not saying my teammate, not to discredit my teammates and their upbringings, but I saw it myself and I saw how, like, my own situation. How can I use my situation to help other people? So just getting people aware of it, saying, listen, you invest your money. And if you invest your money, you can be very, very, very wealthy later on in life. And I feel like that was the big appeal. And so having those conversations with my peers, my teammates, even people in class, my general education classes that I could talk to, it's just something, a passion of mine. Like, listen, why are you spending your money now when you can just have multitudes of it later?
Yeah. So let's dig into kind of a newer topic. It's kind of the topic kind of going around the NCAA is the NIL, right?
Yep. Oh, I
And
could talk about this for hours.
well, the thing about it is, you just talked about how before the NIL was even really a thing, you're already talking to your teammates about taking that 5 grand and investing it and doing right with that money. Now the
Mhm.
NIL comes along where there's way more opportunity than just that $5,000. What kinds of have your friends started to seek you out and be like, hey, remember that time you tried to tell me something and I didn't listen? Now I'm ready to listen. Has that
Yeah.
happened at all?
So I've actually had conversations with my teammates. There's my big concern as a finance manager and a business guy. I am betting, and you can mark this all down. I am betting there is going to be some player suspended because they got in trouble with the IRS. These kids, there's no education as for right now. I don't know of any education and programs put in place to educate these athletes on, you know, taxes and what, like, in how you're going to set up your brand and your company to mitigate liability and stuff like that. There's not. And being a business major, that scares me for my buddies, because yeah, it's a big business opportunity, but let's say your parent claims you as a dependent and you get gifted this, let's say I'm Jack Sawyer, for example, and for easy math, let's round up to it, you got $100,000 truck, right? You got a brand new truck, this NIL deal, fancy, shiny. I don't know what his contract is like, but let's say the taxes and stuff like that aren't included in the contract. Your parents are getting a 40%, tax. They're getting taxed at 40%. You're gonna have to pay taxes on that $100,000 truck. Where are you coming up with that money? Like, these guys don't know that. Or let's say, for example, you sign a deal with Germain Honda or Germain Ford, yeah, and you do a commercial for them, but something goes wrong in the contract and they sue you. They paid you $5,000 for the commercial. If you don't have an LLC set up and that $5,000 isn't sitting in that LLC, they can sue you personally for whatever they want. So if you don't have this knowledge and this protection, and you don't know about it because you're just oblivious to it, you just see money, dollars, and figures like that, and these big figures too, especially as for walk-ons. Like, I've been approached for opportunities that I'm like, what? Like, I'm a backup long snapper at Ohio State. I don't even play. I got a heart condition. I just turned to be a linebacker, and you want to come and do this with me? And I'm like, dang, dude, like, the opportunity is there,
Yeah.
but the education isn't. And so I've had these conversations with these guys, like, you can do this, but you have to understand, you have to set yourself up to be safe and mitigate your liabilities in order to be the most successful person that you can be, business person that you can be.
Yeah. So your friends have started to kind of seek you out a little bit
Yeah.
for this type of knowledge now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much of them being like, "Hey, I know you," or like, "Hey, Rowan, you're the business guy." It's more so of like me looking up saying, "Hey, you know, you may want to consider this." And then word gets out, and then they come to me and say, "Hey, Rowan, what was that you talked to so and so about?" And I'm like, but I've actually talked to one of my professors. He's one of our good friends, and we're actually setting up a program at Ohio State to get that education out there for these guys, because it is very pertinent for them to understand this so they don't fall into this trap. Because
Yeah.
Ohio State, basically what they said is, we don't claim any of this. NIL is all you guys. We're not held liable for anything, which, I mean, you can create your own opinion on that. I personally don't agree with it. But at the same time, I feel like as a football team, you should be supplementing these players with an education or a academic learning opportunity to become educated on this.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That, I mean, I'm glad that there's an opportunity for athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness. I think it's great. I wish it was around when I was playing. Not to say that I would have had trucks thrown at me, but having the opportunity is way better than not, right? So I can completely understand what you're saying. You get a little bit of money, and you see it a lot. You've seen it with professional athletes. You get a little bit of money and it disappears pretty fast. It can disappear quicker than it hit your bank account. So,
Oh, yeah.
giving, equipping them with this knowledge is a really, really big deal. So, like, when you're having these conversations with your teammates, or your family members, mostly your teammates right now, who are in this position to collect with the NIL, how receptive are they, and how many of them have taken your advice?
Right. So I mean, a lot of them are receptive because they're like, dang, I didn't even think about that. But you always have those few who are just like, I don't need that, whatever. I'm not going to get in trouble. Um, but another aspect of that is now that you have that money, what are you going to do with it? So I've talked to a lot of some of these top guys on our team of you just need to get a financial advisor.
Yeah.
As I think everybody, that's the biggest mistake everybody mistakes or does is when they come out of college, they're like, oh, I have all this money, I'm making all this money, and they don't do anything with it. And you know, you got the law of compounding interest, right? Like you need to invest that early and often. So I talk to these guys and say, listen, you got this money now, you got all this stream of income coming in. Get a not so much a financial advisor, but a wealth manager. Have somebody who will look after your money and say, listen, here's how we can make more money while mitigating all of these issues. And on top of that, how can we, you know, take into your personal goals, your financial goals to where you want to be? And so a lot of guys are receptive of that. But you always have those few stragglers who are like, I don't need it. I'm going to be making enough money. I can do whatever I want. So
How many of them have
yeah,
tried to hire you so far? Any of them?
uh, see, I want to go into sales, so I'm not going to be a financial advisor. But I got a connection. So if anybody's listening, they want a financial advisor, come to me and I can help set you up. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I wish they could pick. I should start charging for these conversations I have with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who is such a business-minded man, I'm surprised you haven't tried to, capitalize on it at least a little bit.
It's friends and family. Friends and
Yeah.
family get the free discount.
Yeah. Now, when, you talked about having a family at some point,
Right.
what type of advice are you eager to pass on to your kids, or, your nieces, nephews, friends? What type of advice would you pass on to them when it comes to having that sort of plan outside of athletics and not putting all the eggs in one basket, even if you are that five-star recruit that has everyone, wondering where you're going and what's going to happen?
Right. I think, yeah, I think I could sum it up into one word, and I would say relationships. Life's all about relationships. Whether it doesn't matter what business you're in, what you do with your life. Life is about relationships. It's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. That's a really popular saying. So I think the advice that I'd pass on my kids is make as many relationships as you can. Even if you know that you're not going to utilize them, you never know where they're going to go and what they're going to do and how you can add value to their network and how they can add value to your network. I think cultivating relationships and being intentional in those relationships, not just, getting to know somebody and checking up on them every once in a while just to check up on them, being able to, know their name, know their story, and be able to work together. I feel like building relationships and just increasing the breadth of your network is the number one thing that you can do at such a young age, where it's only going to expand and expand and expand. And they can, let's say you want to go into another career, they could help you with that. Or let's say, they need help with something and you can do that. So I think relationships, networking, and just going out there and cultivating and being intentional with that.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good. So what's next for you?
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking myself. I have to sit back and I think about that every day. I think right now, it's just basically focusing on graduating in December, focusing on making a ton of money right now, as much money as I can, and investing it all. I have a pretty good job offer, not job offer, but I'm looking at this company. One of our family friends is the director of sales for this company, so it's located in Boston. So if I ended up choosing to go out there, it's pretty expensive out there. And I've always lived at home, so I've been saving a ton of money. But hopefully, if that comes to fruition, that'd be awesome. But just to continue to develop relationships for me and save my money and continue to work. So